Federal Workforce Fallout is sponsored by Prince George's Community College.
You're watching Federal Workforce Fallout, where each week we break down the impacts to our neighbors in the federal workforce. I'm Larry Miller. This show is dedicated to the reduction of the federal workforce and the impact that it's having on workers, their families, and our local and national economy. We're providing context, fact-checking claims, and getting you advice from career experts. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to give you the most comprehensive outlook we can of the Trump administration's ongoing efforts to shrink the size of the federal government. Well, this week, we got our first look at Maryland Governor Wes Moore's proposed budget for 2027, and a good chunk of it addresses those impacted by federal job cuts in the state. The state is also facing a $1 billion budget shortfall. So what's he doing to fix it, and how will it impact you? Matt Gregory is in Annapolis to walk us through the governor's plan.
Deja vu, another year, another $1 billion deficit for the state of Maryland. Now, to cover that this year, Governor Wes Moore has promised no new taxes, instead strategic cuts and strategic accounting. But it also means county and city governments might have to pick up more of the tab. Before noon, Governor Wes Moore walked out to his fourth and perhaps most consequential budget presentation.
This budget shows that we can spend wisely and also protect our values.
Amid these hundreds of pages, there's a plan for a $70.3 billion budget that also alleviates a $1.4 billion deficit.
And this budget does not raise taxes or fees on Marylanders.
Moore pointed out the deficit formed from several fronts: inflation, declining revenues, and federal cuts.
There's been no state that's been hit harder by these reckless policies of the Trump-Vance administration than the state of Maryland.
But when asked if the state's overall spending bears some of the blame,
Maryland's spending did not cause 25,000 people to be fired.
To cover the deficit, Budget Secretary Jake Wiseman said it'll take many strategic cuts.
We have cuts ranging from, I want to say it's 40,000 at our lowest, to up to that $322 million.
Nearly $600 million in cuts are actually transfers from state energy and construction funds. Other cuts push some public education retirement plans onto local governments, or there's budget cuts to the Developmental Disabilities Administration.
Every cut we make affects a real person, and every dollar we spend is a dollar we are investing in a better Maryland.
Those investments, more money for local police, education, fighting child poverty, and bringing down the costs of housing.
News of the day as the budget is increased.
On the other side, Hagerstown Republican Senator Paul Quarterman says this budget doesn't fix Maryland's overall spending problem or fix kitchen table issues.
Our citizens are experiencing a lot of pain at home when it comes to their bills, and especially energy costs and things of that nature. And we haven't really addressed any of those yet to date. So obviously it's a long session, and we'll see how that goes as we move forward.
And now the budget will move to Maryland Senate for review. Now, there is one other thing to look out for this session, and that's the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act, or the BRFA. Now, in the past, the BRFA has been used by the legislature to increase taxes or fees without it showing up in the budget. So that's something to keep an eye out for as we get towards April. In Annapolis, I'm Matt Gregory, WUSA 9.
As Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
According to the best of my ability.
According to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Governor.
Thank you.
Now that Governor Abigail Spanberger has been inaugurated in Richmond, the real work begins. She's looking to tackle affordability in the state, as well as that hole left behind from those mass federal worker layoffs. Our Simone Diaba was in Richmond for the inauguration and breaks down her message.
It's a new day in Virginia politics, and with the inauguration now behind us, the governor has her first full day in office ahead, and the real work starts now. Here's highlights from the inauguration.
It is the honor of my life to stand before you and take the oath today. The history and the gravity of this moment are not lost on me. I maintain an abiding sense of gratitude to those who work generation after generation to ensure women could be among those casting ballots, but who could only dream of a day like today. And it is with a profound sense of duty to all Virginians that I assume the governorship and pledge myself to work tirelessly on behalf of our Commonwealth. You are worried about an administration that is gilding buildings while schools crumble, breaking breaking the social safety net and sowing fear across our communities, betraying the values of who we are as Americans, the very values that we celebrate here on these steps. Our government should serve the common good, that the voices of everyday Virginians, not kings, not aristocrats, not oligarchs, that the voices of everyday Virginians should drive us forward, and that our prosperity depends on that union. That our leaders and our fellow Virginians should join in common cause, find common ground, and pursue common purpose. That is the concept at the heart of what it means to be a Commonwealth. And while I have spoken at length about our history, today must be about our future and the story we will write together.
The focus now is on her next 100 days. What policies she brings forward, and do they make a difference for everyday Virginians? On Monday, Governor Spanberger speaks before a joint gathering of Virginia's General Assembly. That speech is at 4 o'clock. In Richmond, Simone D'Alba, WUSA 9.
In her first major speech since her inauguration, Governor Spanberger addressed both chambers of the Virginia General Assembly in Richmond last week, where she again stated that she will work to help federal workers in the Commonwealth after a year of hardships.
Recent data indicate that in 2025, Virginia saw more people leave the state than move in. And a few months ago, Virginia lost its #1 spot in CNBC's annual top state for business rankings. And CNBC was clear about one major factor: federal job cuts that were disproportionately harming Virginia's economy. The chaos coming out of Washington, it's not just bad policy, it's doing real damage to Virginia families and to Virginia businesses. They aren't just federal workers, they're Virginians whose livelihoods depended on the stable federal workforce. People working in manufacturing, food service, and contracting. Our economy is also still recovering from the longest federal government shutdown in history, a time when so many of our fellow Virginians were anxious about the possibility of more mass firings and the threat of withheld paychecks. On day one, I ordered the creation of Virginia's Economic Resiliency Task Force, which will coordinate our statewide response to federal funding cuts, lost research dollars, tariffs, the ongoing impact of DOGE, and more. Among its jobs will be to finally gather a full picture of the economic damage done to our Commonwealth, and then recommend measures that we can take right now to slow down the long-term impacts. That is the responsible thing to do for our Commonwealth. To Virginia's federal workers who have been laid off, furloughed, or are simply caught in the political headwinds of the moment, hear me when I say, as your governor, I will direct the full power of the office to support you, support Virginia's economy, and support the federal workforce who call Virginia home. That's why our Economic Resiliency Task Force will also focus on expanding job placement and public-private partnerships for displaced federal workers and contractors. They're real people facing real challenges, and if some leaders in Washington won't fight for them, leaders in Richmond must.
Still ahead on federal workforce fallout, we are continuing to feel the impact from the mass layoffs of federal workers. There's even been a rise in unemployment, especially for communities of color. More on that after this. "2025 saw more than 300,000 federal workers leave the workforce. In addition to that, unemployment continues to be on the rise, and especially for communities of color. I spoke with workplace discrimination and employment attorney Shakita Hall Jackson about the trend.
I wanted to talk with you about
rising unemployment that we've seen thus far, 2025 seemed to be a pivotal year, particularly for Black women, where we documented well over 300,000 that have left the workforce, whether it was through federal layoffs that happened within the federal government or even in the private sector. It seemed like 2025 was really a year that had a substantial impact on the Black worker in particular. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've noticed and really what this means overall?
What I noticed is, as you stated, the $300,000. Strike that. What I noticed is the 300,000 Black women that was laid off was exactly impacted mostly from the government due to the fact, one, and two different umbrellas. The number one employer for Black employees is the government. So if you have a government shutdown and they're reducing workers, especially probationary employees and different things like that, that heavily impacted the Black employee. And then you have diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts that was dismantled within the first month of some new administration coming in and making it clear that they no longer want to have DEI initiatives, and they was dismantling those initiatives. And as a result, you have the private sector who now feel whether they only brought people in for federal funding or to save face for their stockholders and shareholders, they were now getting rid of their Black employees and mostly Black females. And then you have this idea that as people that actually want to have diverse workforce, and I can respect my employees that I had, but I'm scared I'm gonna be penalized because they were talking about penalizing those with some kind of sanctions in the event that you actually got caught with diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives within your workforce. And so all of it to me has been a direct result and snowball effect of the new administration, aka the government.
Well, and where do you see this sort of heading? And I say that because I think about offices that have been designed to prevent employment discrimination, particularly on the basis of race. Some of these offices have been dismantled as well, even on the federal level. And so is there really anywhere for Black employees, Black workers to turn if they feel like they have been targeted in a specific way?
Yes, mostly you want to reach out to an employment law attorney like myself to determine if this is directly related to your race. Before you do that and you're just scared to do that or you feel like you can't afford to do that, I always say look to the left or the right, be nosy outside of yourself and your department. Who else was laid off? Did it look like they was targeting one particular group, or is this a diverse layoff? Because a lot of it is disguised in layoffs, but when you look at it, who was being targeted? People over 50, Blacks, Hispanics, and things like that. So that's what you want to look at. Then couple up with someone like myself, an employment law attorney, and there is also the EEOC and other local Department of Human Rights agencies that are here to help you bring your claims forward.
I wonder for you, I know last year probably was busy, and I'm curious about what you're seeing now and sort of what you anticipate moving forward.
Last year was very busy for employment law attorneys and for immigration attorneys, and I have not seen that turn down at all. More people are becoming aware of their rights through social media and then different lawsuits that's being publicized. So people are now knowing that I do have a right, I have a voice, and if nothing else, everyone knows of the EEOC, right? At least they heard of it. And so you got more people are now flooding the EEOC, especially as a result of the shutdown. They was also impacted, so now they have a backlog. And so I don't see it going anywhere no time soon. I don't see the increase going down at all. I only want to see a rise, I believe, due to this administration and those who are excited about what they feel like they have a right to now do. Because you got to take away from what Washington is doing and what everyday workers are doing.
And we have a link to Shakita Hall Jackson's website on our website at WUSA9.com. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell made a rare appearance at the Supreme Court last week. It was a show of support for Fed Governor Lisa Cook, who, in an unprecedented move, has been targeted for removal by President Trump. National legal correspondent Jan Crawford is following this landmark test of the central bank's independence.
Embattled Federal Reserve Board Governor Lisa Cook's fight to stay on the job got a boost Wednesday as Supreme Court justices appeared skeptical of President Trump's efforts to fire her. Liberal Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Now, it's not as if she's been incompetent, negligent, or committed malfeasance while in office.
Conservative Justice Samuel Alito.
Is there any reason why this whole matter had to be handled by everybody in such a hurried manner?
The president announced on social media in August that he was firing Cook immediately for cause, saying she committed fraud on a mortgage application before President Biden appointed her in 2023 to her 14-year term. Cook denies the allegations and argues she never got a chance to defend herself, a point Justice Elena Kagan drove home.
The president just really has to say, Ms. Cook, you're fired.
Throughout the argument, the justices were troubled by how the case could affect the Fed's independence. The president has made no secret he wants to oust Chairman Jerome Powell.
We should be paying the lowest interest rate of any country in the world.
The Justice Department now is investigating his oversight of renovations at Fed headquarters.
A lot of very expensive work.
Possibly laying the groundwork for his removal if the court allows the president to fire Cook. Justice Brett Kavanaugh worried the case could politicize the Fed over the long term.
Well, history's a pretty good guide. Once these tools are unleashed, they are used by both sides, and usually more the second time around.
Now, Kavanaugh said what goes around comes around, and this could incentivize a president to come up with old or trivial allegations that are hard to disprove, and that, he said, could weaken or destroy the independence of the Fed. Jan Crawford, CBS News, Washington.
In a recent interview with CBS Evening News anchor Tony DeCopel, President Trump bragged about getting rid of so many federal jobs, saying that it was a good thing. According to the president, they're now able to make a lot more money in the private sector.
We are doing so well right now that we're training people to take those jobs. One other thing, we terminated many federal jobs. Because that's a good thing, because they want to go private. The way you make our country great is you can't have too many federal workers, all right? Those workers are being trained to go into the private sector at a much higher salary.
Yeah, well, let's talk about robotics for a second, because that's a concern of a lot of people working, not only here, but all over the country. What is the future for jobs like these? One guy told me on the way in, he thinks it's a critical threat to his industry.
Well, you know, in one light, you're telling me that you can't get workers.
Well, that's what the CEO said.
Well, you said that, and then you said the opposite. You can't have it both ways. Look, we're going to need help because we're expanding so rapidly that we need people are going to make a lot of money. A skilled worker, a person with talent, education in what they do, not education in nuclear physics, education in what they do. They're going to make a lot of money. Federal workers are leaving the federal government where you have 10 people for every job, and they're going out and they're going into the private sector at 2 and 3 times the salary. And you see that all over. So I only say this. I think that robotics are going to be great because this country won't have enough people if we don't have it. Our people are going to be trained, and they're going to make more money than they've ever made before.
According to the Congressional Budget Office, back in 2024, most private sector jobs don't pay more than federal jobs unless you have a professional degree or a doctorate. Well, it's been a full year of change for so many of us throughout the DMV, especially for our neighbors who are and were in the federal workforce. Well, the Trump administration's sudden job cuts left a lasting impact on the metro. Matt Gregory taking a closer look at the damage done and what 2026 may bring.
How big an impact have the DOGE cuts had on the DMV region? Months later, we're still counting the thousands of jobs lost, but if you talk to experts, they say economically, this has been one of the worst years for the region since the Great Recession.
Put America first.
Not long after the inauguration, the DOGE cuts started. From USAID to the Department of Education to the State Department, thousands laid off.
I'm in survival mode right now.
I just want to work. And I want to be productive. And I believe that I hold value to somebody.
I wasn't prepared to lose my job.
But overall, we expected the DOGE cuts to,
for lack of a better economic word, hammer the region.
Terry Clower from George Mason's Center for Regional Analysis tracked all of it. He says normally in this region, we add around 30,000 jobs a year. Instead,
from December of 24 through September of 25, we're looking at about 33,000 fewer jobs in this region.
But that's not the total jobs lost. Clower says delayed local job reports from October and November haven't added to the tally. Add in fired contractors, and he says it could be around 50,000 lost.
But there are a whole lot of federal workers in this region that are not at GS 10s and 12s.
50,000, despite the job fairs, state legislation, and support groups, statistically, didn't make a big impact for federal workers.
This has been really hard on them, and we've seen, we see the stresses in the social support systems that are going around.
A year of stress for DMV workers.
It's just been an incredible emotional roller coaster, but I look down at my son and I'm just like, I have to figure it out.
Finally coming to an end with an uncertain future in 2026.
Tough times, very tough times. The American dream is turning into an American nightmare.
Clower says if the true number of jobs lost is about 50,000 or less for the region, that means we may have avoided some of the worst of it. But either way, we're going to start to see the economic impact of those cuts reaching into other parts of the economy in 2026. In D.C., I'm Matt Gregory, WUSA 9.
If you're a job seeker, this economy certainly is not for you. New data is showing that the economy is cooling down, according to key economists. The latest findings from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that people are holding on to their jobs as companies are reluctant to hire. Maribel Gonzalez breaks down the data and what it reveals.
The Jobs Opening and Labor Turnover Survey, or JOLTS report, produces monthly and annual data on hires, layoffs, quits, and other labor metrics that provide an insight into the economy's health. Now, its release had been delayed by the historic federal shutdown until now.
It's a really good time to have a job. It's a really terrible time to not have one.
Data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics shows hiring in the U.S. continued to stall in September and October, while employees clung to their jobs with white knuckles. Experts say this is consistent with what is known as a low-hire, low-fire market.
The job market is not growing, and that means that people who are seeking new employment are finding longer search times, and those who are currently employed have their job security somewhat undermined.
August JOLTS report, released on the eve of the government shutdown, showed job openings as a share of total employment remained at a 5-year low at 7.23 million. That number increased in September and then in October to 7.67 million.
Ever since 2022, when we saw an acceleration in inflation and interest rates, employers saw their costs to hire more headcount increase substantially. They're becoming more cautious about how many workers they're adding to their payroll.
But not all industries have stayed stagnant. AI is booming.
Occupations like computer scientists, mathematicians, they're still seeing quite a bit of demand.
While the overall labor market currently appears bleak, economists point to upcoming factors that could change that.
The tax cut takes effect early in 2026. There is going to be a lot of money flowing into bank accounts because of federal income tax refunds.
A clear snapshot of employment activity will be available the morning of December 16th when the BLS releases the November jobs report. Reporting in Los Angeles, I'm Maribel Gonzalez.
You can count on WUSA 9 to stay on top of the reductions to the federal workforce, those affected, and what it means for our communities. In the meantime, scan the QR code on your screen. It will take you to a special section of WUSA9.com dedicated to our coverage of this story. And of course, we'll keep you updated right here on federal workforce fallout. We appreciate you being here as always. Take care, and we'll see you again soon.
You've learned a lot in life, on the job, in the military, raising a family. At Prince George's Community College, that experience can count as college credit. You could earn up to 15 college credits towards your degree just for what you already know. Eligible Prince George's County grads can even attend tuition-free with the Promise Scholarship. So what's your game plan? Turn your journey into a degree at Prince George's Community College.